So now that we know how to specify grammars for well-balanced expressions in arithmetic and well-balanced web page tags in HTML, we're going to return our attention to JavaScript. JavaScript is actually very similar to Python. And just like I showed you a formal grammar for HTML, we're going to work our way up to seeing a formal grammar for JavaScript. But before we get there, I just want to make sure that we really understand how JavaScript programs are interpreted. So I'm going to show you a few more in Python and in JavaScript for comparison. Over here on the left, I have a Python function that computes the absolute value of its integer argument. If you give me a negative number like -5, I will return +5. If you give me a positive number like +9 million, I will return 9 million. So the return value of this function is always either 0 or a positive number. And now I'm going to write the same thing in JavaScript to provide for a comparison. Everything I've drawn in blue is a special keyword or punctuation mark used by the language. So for example, to define a function in Python, we use def. In JavaScript, we write out the word function, but then it's still our choice what to call it. I'm calling it absval in both cases, and how many parameters it should receive and what their names are. In both cases, we have one parameter named x. In Python, we use colons and tabbing to tell what the body of a function is, what the then branch for an if is, what the else branch for an if is. In JavaScript, we use curly braces and closing curly braces to denote this sort of lexical or syntactic scope. So this is sort of curly brace 1, and it matches up with close curly brace 1 over here. 2 matches up with 2, 3 matches up with 3. But in general, the logical structure, the flow or the meaning is the same. In both cases, we check to see if x is less than 0, and we return 0 minus x in that case, or just x alone in the other case. One of the most important operations in any language is printing out information, displaying it to the screen, so that we can see the result of a computation, or just to help us debug. In Python, we use the print procedure. We pass it a bunch of strings. Here I'm adding together the strings hello and exclamation mark to make a very enthusiastic greeting. Hello! Over here on the right, I'm showing the same thing in JavaScript. The equivalent of print is document.write, or perhaps just write. In this class, we'll almost always abbreviate it down to just write to save space. If you're familiar with object-oriented programming, which is not required for this class, you might guess what the dot is about. We might talk more about that later. One of the key differences, though, is that all of our JavaScript functions have to have these open and closed parentheses like a mathematical function has parentheses around its argument.